If you once see this web of your mind, you will see that this web is completely imaginary. You are trapped in it only because you have considered this web to be true. And if you see that this is untrue, then you have missed the truth. I am bound because I have understood. Understanding is binding me, and there is no other net that is binding me. Let me tell you a small story. Perhaps you can understand my point through it. One night, on a dark night, a large caravan came and stayed at a desert inn. There were about 100 camels in that inn. It was midnight when the caravan reached the place. Perhaps they had lost their way and were about to reach the evening, but all those who reached the place at night were tired. They hurriedly tied the pegs, carts, and ropes and tied their camels, but perhaps in this hurry they lost a peg and a rope. It got lost or fell down somewhere on the way. 99 camels were tied, but one camel was left untied. It was midnight, and they wanted to sleep, and it was not right to leave the camel untied. The night was dark, and it could get lost. So they tied the camel to the ground. He went to the innkeeper and said, "If I can give you a peg and a rope, if we can find it, we will be very grateful. One of our camels is left untied. Our peg has been lost or fallen somewhere. We don't have a rope either. 99 camels have been tied. One is untied." The owner of that inn said, "I am very poor, and here there is no peg and no rope. But yes, tell me a trick, tie it. Go and plant the peg. Tie the rope and tell T to go to sleep." Those people said, "You seem to be very mad. If there was a rope and a peg, we would have come to you. Why? Plant the rope and the peg. You told me a very good thing about the dam, but it is not up to us." He said, "Bury what is not there and tie what is not there. Hammer a false peg into the ground in the darkness, so that the camel can understand that the peg has been hammered and the rope is false. Put your hands around its neck and tie it and tell it to sit down." But those people said they don't believe it. The old man laughed, "That you don't believe it about the camel. I see men tied to such a peg which is not there. You go and try the camel." So the man agrees to the camel. He went out of helplessness. The camel had to go. He did not have a peg with him. Now the old man had told him to see. He did this as well and hammered the peg, as if a real peg was hammered. The camel kept standing in the dark and watching the peg being hammered. Then he put his hand around the neck of the camel and tried to tie a rope like he did. The camel must have thought that the rope was tied, and then he said, "Sit down." And the camel sat down, and he went and slept. In the morning he woke up, and the caravan was ready to go on a new journey. When it happened, he took out the cots of 9 camels, untied the ropes and freed them, but the 100th camel had neither a peg nor rope, so how could he untie it? He freed 9 camels, and the camels agreed to move, but all the camels where he kept sitting, they pushed him a lot and shouted at him to get up, but he was not ready to get up. How could he get up? His leg was tied to a peg, and the elders thought that this old man, the owner of the house, was a magician. This was hard to believe. The thought was that the camel would agree with the fake blood. He agreed, and it became too much. Now he doesn't even get up. He went back and said to the old man, "Excuse me, will you lift that pot?" He just sat down. "What have you done to me?" He said, "My crazy friends. First go and uproot the peg and untie the rope," he said. But there was no peg. There was no rope. He said, "Uproot it in the same way as he had hitched it last night. If that which was not there can be hitched, then what which is not there will also have to be taken out. Go." He was helpless and had to go. He went, took out the peg, untied the rope. The camel stood up and agreed to go on the journey. The old man was right. Not only the camel, even the men would have agreed. We all have agreed, and there are such pegs on our minds which do not exist. There are such ropes on our mind which have no power, which have some assistance. In the same way they have to be removed. In the same way they were hit, the wick has to be broken in the same way. How have these ropes been hit? What is the secret? What is the technique? What is the trick to hit them? The trick is that we accepted these things as truth, and that is why they got stuck on us. Accepting them as truth is their secret. Whatever we accept as true, we will get bound by it. Whatever we know to be false, we will get free from it. Accepting them is the secret. Our taking is the reason for being tied to them. Our belief is the reason for being tied to them. So open your eyes a little and see if there is any reason to believe in them. I am not telling you that the peg to which you are tied is bad. I will give you a peg with which you can become go. I have come to tell you that it is bad to be tied to a peg. It is not a question of whether the peg is bad or not. It is bad to be tied to a peg no matter what kind of peg it is. It does not matter whether it is a Hindu, Muslim, Jain, or Christian. It does not matter whether one is a Hindu or a Muslim. It does not matter if the mind is tied up. It is a bad thing because a bound mind and a mind bound by untruth does not know. A mind made up of such things cannot reach where there is knowledge, where there is truth, where there is God, where there is the original source of life. It cannot reach there. Then it will be visible that we are worshiping God. We are worshiping, but we will keep worshiping a peg of some color, and it will be visible that we are going to temples. We have never gone to temples because we do not have a mind that can go to temples, which is free, open, liberated. First of all, one needs a free mind to know the truth. One whose mind is not free, truth cannot be true for him. Freedom is needed from whom? Freedom from those bonds which do not exist, from those ropes which are false, which have no power, no existence in the mind. Fear, the beliefs of the mind, the principles of the mind bind us. Because we believe that they are true, if we search and see, we will find out that we had once believed in them, but we did not know them. There is no point in believing in that ignorance which we did not know. There is no reason for this. When you become empty, then you will break away from beliefs. Your mind will become free from the traps and fears, and then that energy will be generated, that power, that strength, that courage, that self-consciousness will be established. The bridge which becomes a bridge as soon as you break away from these traps of fears becomes a bridge. In the morning I spoke of one sutra of awakening of conscience, and in the evening I spoke to you of another sutra of getting free from faith. It is about getting free from fear and being established in fearlessness. I will talk to you about the remaining few sutras in the upcoming discussions. In the end, I will only say this much. Do not believe my words that what I am saying may be correct. What I am saying may be correct. I am trying to put a new peg in some way, and you may get caught in it and get stuck in it. That is why you need to be careful with me. The most important thing in what I am saying is that you should be careful with me. Some of my words should not get stuck in your heart. Think and ponder over what I have said. While going to sleep at night, think a little over what I have said and search within yourself to see if there are any such people within you who are liars, whom you do not know. You know, those people whom you are afraid of, who are troubling you and who are affecting your lifestyle. If you see such people, you don't have to do anything else. Just seeing them will mean their death. You saw them. They went away like a man lighting a lamp. If he goes into a dark room searching for darkness after lighting the lamp, he will find darkness, but he will not find it because the lamp, the presence of the end of darkness. Similarly, whatever fear is there in our mind, those are the residents of darkness. When you go in search of them consciously by lighting a lamp and find out where they are, you will laugh, and you will not find the residents of darkness. Once this happened in the darkness, I went to God and asked him, why are you after the darkness? What has it done to you? The sun said, what kind of darkness? Which darkness? I don't even know. I haven't met him till date. You call him in front of me, and he comes in front of me. If he complains, then I will apologize, and in future I will recognize who he is so that I don't follow him. Since then, even God has lost. He tries to bring the darkness in front of the sun, but has not been able to bring it till now. He has never brought it. You will find it because the presence of the sun is the end of darkness. It cannot stand in front of us. When we consciously go to search within our mind, what fears are we holding? He answered, if we go to search for the thought of burning, you will be surprised. He got lost. That cot was like that, which the wise businessman had tied for you, and had tied you to it. The wise businessmen were afraid that you might stray from their circle. Those who are wise, the owners of the camel, were traders. They were worried that the camel might get lost or join another group, or might have to take something from someone. In human life too, some smart traders were born, and they tied a cot on the man's back so that no man could come near them. One should not go out of the fold of their circle. One should not go out of the Hindu. One should not go out of the Muslim. A false bed has been laid, false nets have been made, and those men who are closed and suicidal. He kills his enemy and his soul with his own hands. Only he who gets free from the zone of being lost attains the dignity and pride of the soul. Only he becomes a human in the true sense. How he can become a human, I will discuss some more about it with you in the coming 2 days. Listen to my words with so much peace and love. You are very grateful to me for what I heard from you, and I bow to the God sitting inside everyone. Please accept my salutations. Let us take a moment to reflect on an idea so powerful, yet so subtle, that it shapes the very fabric of our lives. How often do we pause to question the beliefs we live by? How often do we challenge the things we take for granted as true? Now, I want to talk about the illusion of reality, the webs of false beliefs and fears that entangle us, and how understanding these illusions can lead to true freedom. Let's begin with point 1. The illusion of reality. Imagine a camel, tied not by a rope but by the belief in a rope. This simple yet profound metaphor reminds us of how we too are bound, not by actual constraints, but by imagined ones. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, "I can't do this," or "this is not for me," without ever questioning why? These thoughts are like that imaginary peg and rope. They don't exist in reality, yet they hold us captive. The question is, why do we accept these illusions? The answer lies in our conditioning. From a young age, we're told what's possible and what's not. We adopt these beliefs without questioning them, and over time, they harden into the walls of our mental prison. To see the truth, we must first recognize the illusion. This brings us to point 2, the power of belief. What we believe shapes our reality. If the camel believed it was free, it would walk away, but because it believed in the imaginary rope, it stayed put. The same applies to us. Our beliefs are incredibly powerful. They can either empower us or imprison us. Have you ever noticed how a small child believes they can conquer the world? They are fearless, unbound by self-doubt. But as they grow, society begins to impose limits. Don't aim too high. Be realistic. You can't do that. And so, the child who once saw endless possibilities starts to believe in the ropes of limitation. But here's the good news. Just as belief can bind us, it can also set us free. If you believe you are capable, if you believe you are worthy, those same beliefs can dissolve the imaginary ropes. This is the transformative power of belief. Now, let's move to point 3. False dependencies. One of the greatest traps we fall into is relying on things that are not real or necessary. In the story, the camel's owners tied it to a non-existent peg because they believed it couldn't be left untied. Similarly, we often rely on external validations, possessions, or relationships to feel secure. But are these dependencies real? Or are they just illusions we've created? Take a moment to think about your life. What are you depending on for your happiness? Is it a job, a relationship, or perhaps a certain status? What happens if that peg is removed? Will your happiness crumble, or will you realize it was never tied to that peg in the first place? Real freedom comes when you recognize that your happiness, your worth, and your peace are not tied to anything external. They are within you, waiting to be discovered. This leads us to point 4, mental conditioning. The camel in the story didn't question the rope because it had been conditioned to believe in it. Similarly, our minds are conditioned by years of societal, cultural, and familial influences. We grow up absorbing ideas about who we are and what we can or cannot do. These ideas become the lens through which we see the world, and we rarely stop to question them. But what if we did? What if we examined every belief, every assumption, every truth we've been told. We might find that many of them are like the camel's rope, imaginary, but deeply impactful. The key to breaking free from this conditioning is awareness. When you shine the light of awareness on a belief, you begin to see it for what it is, a thought, not a fact. And once you see it, you can choose to let it go. Let's discuss point 5. Freedom through awareness. True freedom doesn't come from wealth, power, or possessions. It comes from within. It comes from the ability to see the illusions of your mind and step beyond them. Awareness is like a lamp in a dark room. The moment you light it, the darkness disappears. Similarly, when you become aware of your false beliefs and fears, they lose their power over you. Think about the last time you were afraid to try something new. Was the fear real, or was it just a story your mind told you? The next time you feel trapped, pause and ask yourself, is this rope real, or is it imaginary? This simple question can change your life. As we continue our journey into understanding the illusions that bind us, let us dive deeper into the next set of insights. These truths will help us see the self-imposed limitations we live by and guide us toward true liberation. Let us begin with point 6, self-imposed limitations. Take a moment to reflect. How often have you blamed external circumstances for your inability to move forward? How often have you said, if only things were different, I would be free? The truth is, more often than not, the limitations we face are not placed upon us by the outside world. They are placed by our own minds. Consider the camel from the story. It didn't move because it believed it was tied. The owners didn't impose a real restriction. They simply made it think it was restricted. Similarly, we often tell ourselves, I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, or this is just how things are. These thoughts become the ropes that bind us, preventing us from exploring our full potential. But are these limitations real? Or are they just stories we've come to believe? The first step to breaking free is recognizing that these limitations are self-imposed. Once you see that, you begin to see the possibility of freedom. Now, let's move to point 7. Fear as a constraint. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that binds us. It is the voice in our head that says, don't take risks, don't step out of line, or don't dream too big. But let me ask you, what is fear, really? Fear is like a shadow. It looks real, it feels real, but it has no substance. It cannot harm you unless you let it control you. The camel in the story was afraid to move because it believed it was tied. But what would have happened if it had simply stood up and taken a step forward? The illusion would have vanished, and so would its fear. In our lives, too, we are afraid of taking that first step, afraid of failure, rejection, or judgment. But here's the truth. The fear is often far worse than the reality. When we confront our fears, we realize they are just shadows. They disappear in the light of action. So, I ask you, what fear is holding you back? And what would happen if you decided to take that first step? This brings us to point 8. Breaking free requires insight. To untie ourselves from these imaginary ropes, we need more than courage. We need insight. Insight is the ability to see things as they truly are, not as we imagine them to be. Let's go back to the story. The camel stayed tied because it lacked the insight to question the rope. Humans, however, have the gift of self-awareness. We can examine our beliefs, question our fears, and see through the illusions that bind us. Insight comes when we pause and ask ourselves, is this thought true? Is this fear valid? Is this belief helping me or holding me back? Insight is like a key. It unlocks the chains of illusion and sets us free. But it requires effort. It requires us to look inward, to question what we've been told, and to trust our inner wisdom. Without insight, we remain trapped. With it, we can break free. Let's move to point 9. Challenge your beliefs. This is perhaps one of the most difficult yet most liberating steps on the path to freedom. Our beliefs are like the foundations of our lives. They shape how we see the world, how we see ourselves, and how we interact with others. But what if those foundations are shaky? Not all beliefs are true. In fact, many of the beliefs we hold are simply inherited, passed down from parents, teachers, or society. We accept them without questioning, and they become the walls of our mental prisons. For example, you may believe, "I'm not smart enough to succeed," or "people like me don't achieve great things." But where did these beliefs come from? Are they based on facts, or are they just opinions you've accepted as truth? When you challenge these beliefs, you begin to see that they are not as solid as they seem. And once you see that, you can choose to let them go. Let us discuss point 10. Imposed structures. Society, religion, culture, all of these create structures that shape our lives. These structures are not inherently bad. They provide order, meaning, and connection. But problems arise when we become so tied to these structures that we lose our individuality. Imagine the camel's rope as a symbol of societal expectations. The peg represents the rules and norms we are told to follow. While these can provide stability, they can also become chains. When we blindly follow societal structures without questioning them, we risk losing our true selves. For example, have you ever felt pressured to pursue a certain career, follow a specific tradition, or live in a way that doesn't align with your true desires? These imposed structures can feel like safety nets, but in reality, they often limit our growth. True freedom comes when we learn to respect these structures, but are not bound by them. As we conclude our exploration of the profound lessons from the story, let us reflect on the final 5 points that illuminate the path to true freedom. These ideas challenge us to awaken, break free from ignorance, and discover the power of awareness and truth. Let us begin with point 11, the illusion of bondage. Have you ever stopped to consider what truly binds you? Is it the circumstances of your life, the expectations of others, or your own fears and beliefs? More often than not, it is not the external world that binds us. It is the illusions we create in our minds. In the story, the camel stayed tied because it believed it was tied. There was no actual rope, no real peg, and yet it behaved as though it was bound. How many of us live the same way? We act as though we are limited by forces beyond our control, but these forces are often nothing more than shadows in our minds. Freedom begins when we recognize that these bonds are imaginary. It's not about fighting external circumstances, but about changing the way we see them. Once we understand that the chains holding us are not real, they lose their power. So I ask you, what illusions are you living under? And what would your life look like if you realized they were not real? Now, let's move to point 12. The power of awareness. Awareness is the light that dispels the darkness of ignorance. Imagine walking into a dark room filled with obstacles. Without light, you would stumble and fall. But the moment you turn on the light, you can see clearly and navigate safely. Similarly, awareness allows us to see the truth about our lives. It helps us identify the fears, beliefs, and societal norms that hold us back. The moment we become aware, these obstacles lose their power. The story of the camel teaches us that ignorance keeps us bound, but awareness sets us free. So, how do we cultivate awareness? Start by observing your thoughts, questioning your beliefs, and being honest with yourself. Ask yourself, is this belief serving me, or is it holding me back? Awareness is not about judging yourself. It's about understanding yourself. And in that understanding lies the key to freedom. This brings us to point 13, the courage to face the unknown. Freedom often requires stepping into the unknown, and that can be frightening. The camel in the story might have feared what would happen if it moved without being untied. Similarly, we fear what will happen if we let go of the beliefs and habits we've clung to for so long. But let me ask you, is the comfort of the known worth the price of your freedom? Staying within your comfort zone might feel safe, but it also keeps you from growing, exploring, and truly living. Freedom demands courage. The courage to question, to take risks, and to embrace uncertainty. Remember, the unknown is not your enemy. It is a space of infinite possibilities. When you face it with courage and trust, you discover strengths you never knew you had. So take that step into the unknown. You might stumble at first, but with each step, you will grow stronger and freer. Now let's discuss point 14, breaking the cycle of conformity. Society often expects us to conform, to follow traditions, obey rules, and fit into predefined roles. While some level of structure is necessary, blind conformity can trap us in a cycle of mediocrity. Think about the camel. It conformed to the illusion of being tied, just as we conform to societal expectations without questioning them. But what happens when we stop conforming? What happens when we choose to think for ourselves, to follow our own path? We break the cycle. Breaking free from conformity doesn't mean rejecting society altogether. It means living authentically, aligning your actions with your values and truth. It means having the courage to say, "This is who I am, and this is the life I choose to live." When you do this, you inspire others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of freedom and authenticity. Finally, let us reflect on point 15. Liberation through self-awareness. True liberation comes not from external achievements, but from inner freedom. It is about freeing your mind from fear, ignorance, and false beliefs. The story ends with the camel being freed when the imaginary peg and rope are removed. This symbolizes the power of self-awareness. When you see your mental chains for what they are, you can break free from them. Liberation is not about escaping the world. It is about living in it with clarity, confidence, and courage. So, how do we achieve this liberation? By practicing self-awareness, challenging our fears, and letting go of illusions. When you free your mind, you discover a sense of peace and strength that no external force can take away. You become the master of your own destiny. In conclusion, my friends, the story of the camel teaches us a profound lesson. Most of the chains that bind us are created by our own minds. By recognizing these illusions, cultivating awareness, embracing the unknown, breaking free from conformity, and pursuing self-awareness, we can achieve true liberation. The journey to freedom is not always easy, but it is the most worthwhile journey you will ever take. Imagine a life where you are no longer bound by fear, ignorance, or false beliefs. A life where you are free to be your true self, to pursue your dreams, and to live with purpose and joy. That life is possible, and it begins with a single step: the decision to break free. So, I leave you with this challenge. Take a moment to reflect on the chains that bind you. See them for what they are, illusions, and then take the first step toward freedom. The journey may be long, but the destination is worth it. Thank you.